Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, you're very welcome. This is Reading the Past and I'm Dr. Cat. In my video from a few weeks ago on the early poor laws, which I will leave linked, I referenced the existence of legislation that dealt with games that were permitted and those that were forbidden. At the time, I asked if anyone would be interested in me making a video exploring these statutes on illegal and legal games, and I got lots of comments asking me to do just that. Today, we're going to explore the history of this legislation, to see if we can learn about the concerns that motivated the creation, reworking and passing of these various laws. What games were seen as problematic? Could we draw conclusions about why they were seen as being an issue? What were the punishments, if any? Were particular groups more at risk from legal repercussions for playing certain games? Let's see what we can learn. Our journey begins in 1388, which was the 12th year of the reign of King Richard II, and we're going to start with what is believed to be some of the earliest legislation that focuses on pastimes and specifically how individuals' free time should legally be spent. The statute we're going to look at now was made at Cambridge, and the 6th chapter of that statute reads as follows, quote, "It is accorded and assented that no servant of husbandry, of labourer, nor servant of artificer, nor of victualler, shall from henceforth bear any buckler, sword, dagger, upon forfeiture of the same." A buckler is a small shield, usually around the size of a dinner plate, but can be bigger or indeed smaller. In time, these bucklers would become synonymous through the term swashbuckler with, quote, "a swaggering bravo or ruffian, a noisy braggadocio, someone who moved through the streets allowing their buckler, their small shield that they would commonly attach to their belt, to swash about, and noisily collide with their paired weapons as a means of showing off." Essentially, it became a way of non-verbally announcing that you were big, brave, armed, and ready for a scrap. I have no doubt that many of us will have encountered a modern-day version, or indeed modern-day versions, of people who behave in similar ways. Back to the statute. But in time of war, for defence of the realm of England, so at this point, they can be wearing weapons. And that by the surveying of the arrayers, an arrayer was a person who was tasked specifically with taking care of arms and armour, making sure that everyone had what they needed. For the time being, or travelling by the country with their master or in their master's message. But such servants and labourers shall have bows and arrows, and use the same Sundays and holy days, and leave all playing at tennis or football and other games called quoits. This is where a ring would be thrown over a spike or a set of spikes, usually for points. Dice, casting of the stone. I'm not sure of the rules of this one, the casting of the stone, but the title indicates, I think, that the action involves throwing a stone. Possibly a large and heavy stone as far as possible. I think it's like a modern-day shot put, or indeed the stone may be heavier than that. It could be like a caber toss, but with a heavy rock. There was also a prohibition around a game called Cales, which is perhaps more recognisable to us as ninepins or skittles, and other such importune games. My question is, what do we think could make these games importune? I mean, they are games that could be gambled on, so perhaps the risk of money being wasted and potential for discord resulting from these games being played is the issue. Lots of these games could be a way to display or even increase strength and skill. Is that perhaps a problem? These games likely led to groups of people assembling with each other. Could these groups become rowdy? Is this perhaps the basis, the cause for concern surrounding these games? Or were they simply viewed as being far too much of a waste of time? Were they viewed as being a dangerous distraction from more pressing issues facing the Commonwealth? like, for example, the practicing of archery on Sundays and holy days. With this in mind, in the case of the games that are prohibited, is it perhaps that they have a lack of martial purpose, and that is what makes them problematic? Certainly, it was ordered, quote, that the sheriffs, mayors, bailiffs and constables shall have power to arrest, and shall arrest all doers against this statute, and seize the said bucklers, swords and daggers, and keep them till the sessions of the justices of the peace, and the same present before the same justices in their sessions, together with the names of them that did bear the same. So the offending items will be seized, those who were carrying them will have their names taken down, and they may have to answer for their actions before justices of the peace. And it is not in the king's mind that any prejudice be done to the franchises of lords touching the forfeitures due to them. And so it appears to me that members of civic authorities, namely those with legal oversight, in addition to members of the nobility, are being set apart. They are the ones who will enforce the requirements of this statute. They will not, though, enforce it among themselves, but rather seemingly upon those that occupy a less rarefied place in the social hierarchy. 21 years later, in 1409, which was the 11th year of the reign of King Henry IV, who was the king who ruled following the deposition of Richard II, we will see that another statute was issued. This one sought to amend the statute of 1388, which is, of course, during the reign of Richard II. So, in effect, the government of his deposer is issuing an amended statute to one that he issued during his reign. It reads as follows, quote, whereas in the statute made at Cant, the footnote to this reads Cambridge, which is, of course, where the 1388 statute was issued. But I would understand Cant, full stop, as a contraction of Canterbury. So is this perhaps evidence of a mistake, or maybe simply a misremembering? The new statute continues and correctly asserts that the earlier statute was created in, quote, the 12th year of the reign of King Richard. Amongst other things, it was accorded and assented that the servants and labourers of husbandry and labourers and servants of artificers and of victuallers should have bows and arrows, and use the same the Sundays and other festival days, and utterly leave playing at the balls. First of all, I'm going to indulge in my immaturity and say playing at the balls, snicker snicker, but also, and to pretend that these sorts of things don't amuse me, I am going to point out that realistically this is likely referencing a general prohibition against all ball games, as there were, and indeed are, a varied selection to choose from. For example, quote, as well handball as football. Now, these games are known today, but I think it's likely that the medieval version of the rules, if indeed there were rules as we know it, may vary from that which we recognise today. In the case of the medieval version of both hand and football, the immediate difference would likely be the seeming lack of a defined pitch or court. Reportedly, teams of players might run through city streets or even between villages as part of their play. Perhaps neighbours found their lives disrupted by many hands and feet hitting balls against their homes, businesses and even places of worship. In the case of football, there are a few medieval accounts that point to the game as being a cause of notable injuries, some of which appear to have been caused by accident, others through violence. There are also reports of there being loss or breakage of property. So were these ball games banned because experience proved that they were simply too dangerous then? Perhaps, but they were not alone. Because we do see this repeated prohibition regarding, quote, other games called quoits, dice, bowling and cales, and other such unthrifty games. Unthrifty. An interesting word choice. So are these games not just valueless, but maybe also wasteful and harmful? Of or to what, though? Wasteful of their time, perhaps? Harmful to their physical health and or their property and possessions? It continues, quote, and that the sheriffs, mayors, bailiffs and constables shall have power to arrest all that do contrary. So no longer, seemingly, is the punishment the seizure of offending items. It is also possible that you may now be arrested. Continuing on, quote, "As in the said statute is more fully contained, our sovereign lord the king will that the said statute be firmly holden and kept, joined to the same, that every such labourer or servant that do contrary to the same statute shall have imprisonment by 6 days, and the mayors and sheriffs, or the mayors and bailiffs of cities and boroughs, and that the constables in other towns shall have power to put this statute in execution from time to time. If they do not thereof execution, these same mayors and sheriffs, or mayors and bailiffs aforesaid, shall pay to the king for every default 20 shillings, and the constables or constable of every town that doth not like the execution of this statute shall pay for every their or his default 6 shillings and 4 pence, and that the justices of the assizes shall have power to inquire in this case in their sessions from time to time of them that do contrary to this statute, and thereof to certify in the chancery." So now we are seeing punishments being set down in statute, with fines and imprisonment being risked, with cases being brought before not only the court of a person's county, but also in chancery, which was, quote, "the court of the Lord Chancellor of England, the highest court of judicature next to the House of Lords." Unlawful games were becoming seemingly a much more risky business. Games would also concern King Henry VIII during his reign. On 3 separate occasions, statutes would be made to deal with this. First up, in 1511, there was, quote, "an act concerning shooting in longbows," that made reference to how in, quote, "old time, the great number and substance of archers hath grown and multiplied, but how since then the practice of archery had been damaged and made more difficult. One cause of this degradation in skill was put down to, quote, "the customable usage of tennis play, bowls, clash, and other unlawful games." For remedy of this, King Henry VIII's Parliament determined that all men under 60 should have access to and practice shooting a longbow. Those who were excluded from this requirement were churchmen, justices of the bench and assizes, barons of the exchequer, and boys under 7. Fathers, heads of household, and masters were responsible for ensuring that the boys and men in their charge had both the time and the means to practice their archery skills, on pain of being fined. This statute also commands that, quote, "all the statutes heretofore made against them that use unlawful games be duly put in execution, and punishment had according to the penalties of the same." Around 3 years later, in 1514, there was produced, quote, "an Act for the maintenance of archers," which reiterated the legal requirement for the majority of Henry's male subjects to have access to longbows and arrows and to become proficient in their use. Again, quote, "tennis play, bowls, cloche, and other unlawful games were highlighted as being a problem." Then, in 1541, which was the 33rd year of King Henry VIII's reign, we get an Act for the maintenance of artillery and debarring of unlawful games. This statute made reference to the prior, quote, "good and laudable Act," which sought to deal with these matters, but that was being overridden by, quote, "many subtle and inventive and crafty persons intending to defraud or get around the same statute. Sithence the making thereof have found and daily find many and sundry new and crafty games and plays, as legetting in the fields." Now, I have searched high and low, but I still have absolutely no clue what legetting in the field refers to. So if anyone has any idea, please do let us know in the chat and in the comments. There was also slide thrift, otherwise called shove groat. This was an early form of shuffleboard, using coins in the place of the modern pieces that we know. It goes on, as well within the City of London as elsewhere, in many other and diverse parts of this realm, keeping houses, plays, and alleys for the maintenance thereof, by reason whereof archery is sore decayed, and daily is like to be more minished, read diminished, and divers bowers and fletchers, the people who make the arrows, for lack of work, gone, and inhabit themselves in Scotland and other places out of this realm, there working and teaching their science to the puissance of the same, to the great comfort of strangers and the detriment of this realm. Once again, the dangers of, quote, tennis play, bowls, cloche, and other unlawful games is being bemoaned. This statute also banned people from keeping houses for unlawful games, such as, quote, bowling. Now, it is worth noting, I think, that Henry VIII did have bowling alleys installed at his palaces, including at Whitehall and Hampton Court. So arguably, this stands as clear evidence that these laws, these statutes, were not intended to affect everyone equally. They are about controlling the behaviour and free time of a particular group. It goes on, there are complaints about quoiting, namely playing quoits. Cloche. This is a game we've heard about a few times already, and it's played with either a ball or a bowl. It may be, quote, equivalent to ninepins or skittles, or if the rules followed what we see in, quote, Dutch descriptions, it appears that the bowl used in the game had to be driven by a spade or chisel-shaped implement, the klos betel, through a hoop or a ring, as in croquet. There is also complaint about cales, which we have talked about previously. This was ninepins or skittles. Half bowl, another form apparently of skittles. Tennis. In every instance we've seen a reference to tennis, they are referring to what is known as real tennis, which was of course the very game that King Henry VIII famously loved and played often. The dicing table. This may refer to backgammon or carding, playing cards, or any other manner of game prohibited by any statute heretofore made, or any unlawful new game now invented or made, or any other unlawful new game hereafter to be invented, found, had, or made, upon pain to forfeit and pay for every day, keeping, having, or maintaining, or suffering any such game to be had, kept, executed, played, or maintained within any such house, garden, alley, or other place, contrary to the form and effect of this statute, 40 shillings. And also, every person using and haunting any of the said houses and places and their playing, to forfeit for every time so doing, 6 shillings and 8 pence. Provision was, though, made for houses to be licensed for games, with security or surety being provided to ensure the good conduct of all those involved. As the note beside Clause 9 explains, quote, magistrates may enter gaming houses and arrest the keepers and parties playing and take security for their good behaviour. Individuals with legal authority over a city or town were tasked with regularly searching gaming houses, with fines possible for those who neglected these duties. Artificers and servants were prohibited from, quote, play at the tables, tennis, dice, cards, bowls, clash, quoiting, loggetting, which is the one that I am still confused about, or any other unlawful game out of Christmas, under pain of 20 shillings to be forfeit for every time, and in Christmas to play at any of the said games in their master's houses or in their master's presence, and also that no manner of person shall at any time play at bowl or bulbs in open places out of his garden or orchard, under the pain for every time so offending to forfeit 6 shillings and 8 pence. It would seem then perhaps that a lot of our Christmas pastimes would be forfeit according to this statute. For example, the numerous professional football games that are played during this period today would, I assume, be totally prohibited, both for what they are and for when and where they are being played. With that being said, quote, it shall be lawful for every master to license his or their servants to play at cards, dice, or tables with their said master, or with any other gentleman repairing to their said master, openly in his or their house, or in his or their presence, according to his or their discretion, and that it shall be lawful to every such servant, for every time so being commanded or licensed by his said master, as is after said, to play at cards, dice, or tables with his said master, or other gentleman so to him repairing. Additionally, this Act states that, quote, It shall be lawful to every nobleman and other, having manors, lands, tenants, or other yearly profits for term of life in his own right, or in his wife's right, to the yearly value of £100 or above, to command, appoint, or license by his or their discretion, his or their servants or family of his or their house or houses for to play within the precincts of his or their houses, gardens, or orchards, at cards, dice, tables, bowls, or tennis, as well amongst themselves as other repairing to the same house or houses, and that they so playing, by a commandment, appointment, or license, as is aforesaid, shall not occur any danger or penalty contained in this Act for the same. As for the practice of archery, Henry VIII's 1541 statute commands that all Englishmen under the age of 60, except those who are exempted by being churchmen or judges, shall, quote, exercise in shooting longbows. Those who were responsible for servants and children were also made responsible for ensuring that those servants and children were able to partake in the practice of archery. In the case of those who were under 17, it was commanded that they should have access to a bow and 2 arrows. For those who were over 17, their master, if they were servants, should see to it that they had a bow and 4 arrows. The masters, householders and fathers who failed to provide for their charges in this manner were liable to a fine of 6 shillings and 8pence for every month that no bows and arrows were provided. Fast forwarding now to 1728, and to a statute that was created in the second year of the reign of King George II, which asserts that, quote, and whereas a good and profitable statute was made in the 33rd year of the reign of King Henry VIII, so that is the 1541 statute, among other things for the debarring of unlawful games. And whereas by the said statute no power is given unto the justice of the peace to demand and take from persons found playing contrary to law any security than their own recognizances, that they, or any of them, shall not from thenceforth use such unlawful games, unless such persons are so found playing contrary to law upon the view of one or more justice or justices of the peace. For remedy thereof, be it further enacted by the authority aforesaid, that where it shall be proved upon the oath of 2 or more credible witnesses, before any justice or justices of the peace, as well as where such justice or justices shall find upon his or their own view that any person or persons have or have used or exercised any unlawful game contrary to the said statute, the said justice or justices shall have full power and authority to commit all and every such offender and offenders to prison, without bail or mainprize, unless and until such offender and offenders shall enter into one or more recognizance or recognizances, with sureties or without, at the discretion of the said justice or justices of the peace, that he or they respectively shall not from thenceforth play at or use such unlawful game. A little over a century after the production of this Georgian statute, though, this legislation began to be dismantled. As we see here, part of Henry VIII's 1541 Act would be repealed by the Gaming Act of 1845. The 1541 Act was also subject to the Statute Law Revision Act of 1948. The whole Act was then repealed by the Betting and Gaming Act of 1960. And as we can see, the 1728 Act was also repealed at this time too. So what do you think of the various statutes that have been created to try to deal with games over the centuries? Why were the games that we've looked at today seen as being such an issue? Is it perhaps connected to the potential for gambling, for drawing crowds, for sowing disorder through disputes? Or is it simply about time being wasted? But why, though, are these concerns seemingly solely focused on servants, or those who may be perceived as being from a lower social class? Also, what do you think might have motivated the repeal of these laws in the end? As always, I'm looking forward to reading your conversations in the comment section underneath this video. I'd also love it if you could pop an emoji or a social glyph in the comments too, because that will boost the engagement, get this video shared out more, and help us to grow our community. I'm thinking something gameplay based, so bowling, tennis, something like that, or an archery emoji. And can you also write why you've picked this emoji? Because I've been reliably informed that the algorithm goblins do prefer words alongside the emoji, so not just emojis on their own. You can find me elsewhere on social media. I will leave links to the place you can find me on the internet in my description box. Please do follow me over on some or all of those so we can continue this conversation and start some others. I do hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, why not share it with your friends? If you like the channel, let some pals know about it. You can tell me about this video in particular by hitting the thumbs up. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you think you are subscribed, have a check now just to make sure you've not been mysteriously unsubscribed against your will. While you are there, checking, subscribing, maybe resubscribing, please hit the bell icon beside the subscribe button and then select all in the drop-down that will appear, and that way, YouTube allege, they will tell you when I've next uploaded, but also when I will next be going live, which at the moment I am doing once a month to talk about the history news. I get lots of lovely news articles sent to me by my wonderful viewers. I then put them together and we sit down and talk about them live. Currently, those lives are taking about 2.5 hours. It's a good time. You aren't going to want to miss it. We have, of course, got our failsafe. If you head to my website, which I will leave linked, it is www.katrinamarchant.com. Head over to my contact page and put your email address in this box and then click sign up. This will add you to my list, which will allow me to send you out an email once a week to let you know what I've been up to, but also to send you useful links for my content for the coming days. I hope you're going to have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.